I'm Major General Jesse Marriott, 50 years old, and I built my career from a small-town kid who dreamed of flying into a two-star command in the U.S. Air Force. For years, I sent money home, covered bills, and tried to earn my father's respect the way I earned every promotion, through discipline and results. But at my mother's funeral, when he stood before 300 people and called me his greatest mistake, I made a choice that changed everything. Have you ever been humiliated by someone you spent your life trying to make proud? If so, tell me your story in the comments. You're not alone. Before I tell you what happened that day, let me know where you're watching from. And if you've ever had to stand your ground against someone who tried to diminish your worth, hit that like button and subscribe. What came next might surprise you. I stand on a cemetery hillside in October, watching honor guard boots move in perfect rhythm across wet grass. My mother's casket sits draped in an American flag, and I've positioned myself in the back row because that's what 27 years in the Air Force taught me. Observe before you act, stay calm when chaos breaks loose, and never expect your father to see you as anything but a disappointment. The folding chairs are arranged in precise lines, and Joseph Marriott, my father, sits in the front wearing his retired sergeant major uniform, every ribbon perfectly aligned. He hasn't looked at me once since I arrived. That's nothing new. When I was 8, he told me I threw a baseball like a girl who'd never amount to anything. When I was 17 and got into the Air Force Academy prep program, he said it was probably a diversity quota. When I commissioned as a second lieutenant at 23, he introduced me at the ceremony as my daughter who wanted to play with planes. My mother, Evelyn, was the one who drove 6 hours to see me get my wings. She was the one who wrote letters during my deployment to Afghanistan, who kept newspaper clippings of promotions I never told my father about, who quietly said she was proud when he was out of earshot. She worked as a nurse for 40 years and volunteered at the VA hospital every weekend, which is why there's an honor guard here at all. That, and because I made some calls. My father doesn't know about those calls. He doesn't know about a lot of things. The chaplain finishes his remarks, something generic about service and sacrifice, and then my father stands up. He wasn't supposed to speak. There's a program, an order of service that we all agreed on, but Joseph Marriott has never been good at following anyone else's plan. He walks to the podium with that same purposeful stride I remember from childhood, the one that meant someone was about to get corrected, disciplined, or dressed down. The crowd goes quiet. My aunt reaches over and squeezes my hand. She knows what's coming. We all do. Evelyn was a good woman, my father begins, his voice carrying across the cemetery. She served this community, she served veterans, she lived a life of duty. He pauses, and I can see him scanning the crowd, landing on me for just a second before looking away. But she carried a burden that most of you don't know about. Our daughter was our greatest mistake. She never amounted to anything. She never gave us grandchildren, never settled down, never accomplished what we hoped for her. Evelyn died worrying about her. The words land like artillery fire. I don't move. I don't blink. I've been in rooms where generals screamed at colonels, where senators questioned my judgment, where foreign officials tried to intimidate me with threats. This is just another kind of combat, and I learned a long time ago that the person who stays calm wins. My aunt's grip tightens. Someone behind me gasps. My father continues, oblivious or uncaring. She joined the military because she didn't know what else to do with herself. Never took it seriously. Never earned any real respect. I tried to guide her, tried to instill discipline, but some people just don't have what it takes. I watched the honor guard shift slightly. The officer in charge, a captain with army tabs and a ranger scroll, has turned his head toward me. I can see the moment of recognition in his eyes, the way his posture changes. He served under my command in a joint task force 3 years ago. Captain Jordan Price. Good officer. Better instincts. He steps away from the casket, moves toward the center of the ceremony space, and comes to attention facing me directly. His voice cuts through my father's monologue. General, ma'am, permission to continue the ceremony? Every head turns. 300 people in folding chairs, all moving at once, looking back at me in the last row. My father stops mid-sentence. His face goes from confident to confused to something I've never seen before, genuine fear. I stand slowly, smoothing my civilian dress uniform. I didn't wear my service dress. Didn't wear the ribbons, the badges, the stars. Wore black because that's what you wear to your mother's funeral. But Captain Price knows exactly who I am. Permission granted, Captain, I say. My voice doesn't shake. It never does. Ma'am. He salutes. I return it. The honor guard moves back into position with mechanical precision. The captain lifts the flag from my mother's casket, and the detail begins the fold. 13 folds, each one ceremonial, each one representing something: life, eternity, honor. I walk down the aisle between chairs. People stand as I pass. Some of them are veterans who served with my father decades ago, who listened to him talk about his disappointing daughter over beers at the VFW. Some of them are my mother's friends from the hospital, who heard the same stories. All of them are staring. My father has gone pale. I reach the front row and stand beside him as Captain Price completes the flag fold. He pivots, walks 3 paces, and presents it to me with the precision of someone who has done this 100 times. On behalf of the President of the United States Air Force, and a grateful nation, please accept this flag as a symbol of our appreciation for your loved one's service. I take the flag, hold it against my chest, turn to my father, and hand it to him. She was your wife, I say quietly. You should have this. His hands shake as he takes it. Someone in the crowd whispers, "Did he say General?" Another voice responds, "Brigadier General Marriott. She runs joint operations out of Peterson." My father looks at me like he's seeing a stranger. Maybe he is. Jessie, her name was Evelyn, I say. And she was worth 1,000 speeches about duty. She taught me that real strength doesn't need an audience. That honor isn't about the uniform you wear, it's about how you treat people when no one's keeping score. I step back. Captain Price directs the honor guard to present arms. Taps begins, the notes clear and lonely across the cemetery. My father sits down hard in his chair, still holding the flag. I remain standing through the entire ceremony. When it's over, people approach me carefully. A lieutenant colonel I mentored years ago shakes my hand. A rear admiral from Naval Station Norfolk tells me my mother would be proud. My father sits alone in the front row while the crowd disperses around him. I walk back to my car without speaking to him. My aunt catches up halfway across the parking lot. "Jessie, sweetheart, I'm fine, Aunt Marie." He didn't know? I unlock my car door. He never asked. The house I grew up in sits at the end of a cul-de-sac in Northern Virginia, a modest rancher with a flagpole in the front yard and a faded yellow ribbon still tied around the oak tree from my first deployment. That was 16 years ago. My father never took it down. I think he liked the idea of having a daughter in the military more than he liked the reality of me. When I was young, maybe 6 or 7, I found a box of his old army photos in the garage. Him in fatigues, standing with his unit in Germany during the Cold War. He looked proud in those pictures, confident, like a man who knew exactly where he belonged. I asked him once if I could join the army when I grew up. He laughed and said, "Women don't fight. They follow." My mother corrected him gently that night at dinner, mentioning nurses in combat zones, women pilots, officers serving with distinction. He waved her off and told me I'd understand when I was older that the military wasn't about what I saw in movies, it was about discipline, sacrifice, and strength I didn't possess. I was too soft, too emotional, too female. I spent my teenage years trying to prove him wrong. Joined the track team, made captain. Took advanced physics and calculus, graduated 3rd in my class. Applied to the Air Force Academy and got accepted on merit, not quota, despite what he told his friends. My mother drove me to Colorado Springs for in-processing. My father stayed home, said he had a conflict with his VFW schedule. He didn't. I commissioned as a 2nd lieutenant at 23 with a degree in aerospace engineering. My mother sat in the front row and cried. My father stood in the back with his arms crossed, talking to another retired NCO about how these kids today don't know what real service looks like. I got my first assignment at Vandenberg Air Force Base, working satellite operations. It wasn't glamorous. I pulled 12-hour shifts monitoring orbital trajectories, coordinated with engineers, briefed colonels twice my age who didn't like taking information from a lieutenant barely out of school. I made mistakes, got yelled at, learned. My mother sent care packages every month, cookies, books, handwritten notes reminding me she believed in me. My father called twice in 2 years. Both times to ask if I'd considered getting out and doing something practical like teaching or nursing. I made first lieutenant at 25. My mother flew out for the promotion ceremony. My father sent a card that said, "Congratulations on your participation." By the time I pinned on captain at 28, I'd deployed 3 times. Once to Iraq during the surge, coordinating air support for ground operations. Twice to Afghanistan, running intelligence assessments for joint operations. I learned Arabic basics, enough to work with interpreters. I learned Pashto curse words from a Marine gunnery sergeant who treated me like a peer, not a quota. I learned how to make decisions when lives hung in the balance, how to brief generals without flinching, how to write condolence letters to families of airmen who didn't come home. My father never asked what I did overseas. He told people I worked on a base somewhere and changed the subject. My mother kept a map on her kitchen wall with pins marking everywhere I'd been stationed. Red pins for deployments, blue for training, green for assignments. By the time I made major at 32, her map looked like a logistics chart. I came home on leave that year to find my father in his garage, surrounded by medical bills. My mother's rheumatoid arthritis had gotten worse. The medication was expensive. Their mortgage was underwater from the housing crisis. He looked at me across a card table covered in envelopes and said, "I suppose you're doing well enough now to help your parents." Not a question. An expectation. I paid off their mortgage with money from my deployment bonuses and hazard pay. Covered my mother's medication costs for the next 3 years. Set up an automatic transfer from my account to theirs every month. My father never said thank you. He said, "It's about time you contributed to this family." I made lieutenant colonel at 37. My mother was in the hospital that week for a procedure on her hands, the arthritis so bad she could barely hold a fork. I flew back from Ramstein Air Base in Germany to see her. Walked into her room in my uniform, and she smiled like I'd brought her the moon. My father was there, sitting in the corner, reading a newspaper. He glanced up when I entered. "You get promoted again?" "Yes, sir." He went back to his newspaper. My mother reached for my hand with her bandaged fingers. "I'm so proud of you, sweetheart." My father muttered something about participation trophies for everyone these days and left to get coffee. I stayed with my mother for 6 hours, talking about everything except him. She told me she'd saved every letter I sent, kept them in a box under her bed. Told me she knew I was doing important work, even if she didn't understand all of it. Told me she worried, but that she trusted me to take care of myself. I asked her why she stayed with him. She said, "Because I made a promise." And because underneath all that pride, he's a scared man who never learned another way to be strong. I didn't understand that then. Maybe I still don't. At 39, I made full colonel. My mother was too sick to travel by then, so I sent her photos from the ceremony. My father called me 2 days later. Not to congratulate me. To tell me that I needed to send more money because his truck needed new tires and the VA wasn't covering something or other. I sent the money. I always sent the money. My mother died on a Tuesday morning in March, 3 months before my 48th birthday. I was at Peterson Space Force Base in Colorado Springs, preparing for a classified briefing when my aunt called. My father hadn't called me himself. He told Marie to let Jessie know when she has time. I took emergency leave. Flew commercial because military transport wasn't available on short notice. Sat in seat 23B next to a college kid who complained about his parents the entire flight. I wanted to tell him that someday he'd give anything to hear his mother's voice one more time, but I didn't. I just closed my eyes and tried to remember the last thing she said to me. It was during a phone call 2 weeks earlier. She'd asked if I was happy. I'd said I was fulfilled. She'd laughed, that soft knowing laugh, and said, "That's not what I asked." I'd told her I'd call back when I had more time. I never did. When I arrived at the house, my father was sitting in his recliner, watching Fox News with the volume too loud. He didn't stand up when I walked in. "Your mother's gone," he said. "Funeral's Saturday. Marie's handling arrangements." "I'd like to help with arrangements." "Marie's got it covered." I wear black to my mother's funeral. Not my service dress uniform with the ribbons and badges that catalog 27 years of deployments, commands, and commendations. Not the blues that announced who I am to anyone who knows how to read rank insignia. Just a simple black dress, professional and appropriate. My father requested that I not wear the uniform. He said it would make the day about me instead of about Evelyn. I agreed because I came to bury my mother, not to fight him. The morning of the funeral, I stand in front of the mirror in my hotel room and barely recognize myself without the uniform. For most of my adult life, I've been defined by what I wear, the service dress that signaled authority, the flight suit that meant business, the utilities that blended into whatever environment I was working in. Civilian clothes feel like a costume. My phone buzzes. A text from Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Vance, my deputy commander at Peterson. "Thinking of you today. You need anything, I'm one call away." I respond with a thumbs-up emoji. Sarah's been my right hand for 3 years now, the kind of officer who anticipates problems before they develop and solves them before they land on my desk. She knows about my father. Knows why I never talk about him at command functions, why I change the subject when people ask about my family. She's met my mother twice at promotion ceremonies my father didn't attend. The funeral home is a low brick building with a white columned entrance that's supposed to suggest dignity and tradition. Inside, it smells like lilies and furniture polish. My Aunt Marie intercepts me at the door, pulling me into a hug that lasts longer than I expect. "Your father's already in the chapel," she says quietly. "He wanted a front row to himself." "That's fine. Jesse, honey, I need to tell you something." She pauses, choosing words carefully. "He's been telling people things. About you. About how you've been absent, how you never helped with your mother's care." I tried to correct him, but he's grieving in his own way. His own way involves rewriting history. His own way involves protecting his ego. You know how he is. I do know. I've known since I was old enough to understand that some people need to tear others down to feel tall. The chapel fills slowly. Veterans from my father's old unit, wearing motorcycle club vests over their dress shirts. My mother's friends from the hospital, nurses, and administrators who remember her kindness. Neighbors, distant relatives, people whose faces I recognize from childhood, but whose names have faded. I take a seat in the back row, next to a window. The late morning sun cuts through stained glass, throwing colored light across the carpet. From here I can see everything, the casket at the front, draped in an American flag I personally requested through channels. The flowers arranged in careful sprays. My father in the front row, sitting ramrod straight in his old sergeant major uniform, the one he has dry cleaned twice a year even though he retired 15 years ago. The chaplain begins with a prayer. Standard language about eternal rest and faithful service. I mouth the words automatically, a habit from years of military ceremonies. Then my aunt gives a eulogy about my mother's volunteer work, her dedication to veterans, the way she remembered everyone's name and always asked about their families. It's a good eulogy. True. My mother was the kind of person who made the world softer just by existing in it. A colleague from the hospital speaks next, sharing a story about how my mother stayed late one Christmas Eve to sit with a dying veteran who had no family, how she held his hand and sang carols until he passed peacefully. There are tissues being pulled from purses, soft sounds of crying. Then my father stands. This wasn't in the program. I'd seen the order of service when I arrived: chaplain, eulogies, military honors, closing prayer. There was no space allocated for remarks from Joseph Marriott. But he's walking to the podium anyway, and the funeral director looks uncertain whether to stop him. My aunt turns in her seat, catches my eye. Her expression says everything, brace yourself, here it comes, I'm sorry. My father adjusts the microphone, clears his throat, looks out over the assembled mourners with the confidence of a man who has led soldiers, who has stood at attention while officers praised his service, who has never doubted his right to be heard. Evelyn was a good woman, he begins. His voice is strong, practiced, the voice of someone who has given speeches before. She served this community with grace. She served veterans with compassion. She lived a life of duty and sacrifice, even when that sacrifice was more than anyone should be asked to bear. I feel something cold settle in my chest. I know that tone. That's his "I'm about to make a point" tone, the one he used when I was 17 and came home past curfew, when I was 20 and told him I was commissioning instead of getting a real job. Most of you know that Evelyn and I had one child. A daughter. He pauses. Looks directly at me for the first time all day. Our daughter was our greatest mistake. She never amounted to anything. She never gave us grandchildren, never settled down, never accomplished what we hoped for her. She joined the military because she didn't know what else to do with herself. Never took it seriously. Never earned any real respect. The room has gone completely silent. Not the respectful silence of a funeral, but the shocked silence of people who can't believe what they're hearing. My father doesn't notice. Or doesn't care. I tried to guide her. Tried to instill discipline. Tried to teach her what real service looks like. But some people just don't have what it takes. Evelyn died worrying about her, wondering what would become of a daughter who drifted through life without purpose. I don't move. My hands are folded in my lap, my expression neutral. I learned a long time ago how to sit through briefings where generals questioned my competence, how to stand at attention while being dressed down for mistakes I didn't make, how to maintain composure when every instinct screamed to defend myself. This is just another test. The greatest burden Evelyn carried was the disappointment of "General, ma'am, permission to continue the ceremony?" The voice comes from the front of the chapel. Captain Jordan Price, leading the honor guard detail, has stepped away from his position beside the casket. He's standing at attention, facing me directly, his voice clear and formal. Every head in the chapel turns. 300 people rotating in their seats like synchronized machinery, all looking back at the woman in black sitting quietly by the window. My father stops mid-sentence. I watch the progression of emotions cross his face: confusion, irritation, recognition, and then something I've never seen before. Fear. I stand slowly. Captain Price salutes. I return it with the precision of someone who has done this 10,000 times. Permission granted, Captain. Ma'am. The honor guard moves into position. 6 service members, 3 on each side of the casket, their movements synchronized. They lift the flag at the corners, pulling it taut over my mother's casket. Captain Price nods to the detail, and they begin the 13 folds. I'm walking down the aisle now, and people are standing as I pass. Not out of respect for grief, but something else. Something they're just beginning to understand. I reach the front row and stand beside my father, who has gone completely pale. The flag folding continues. Each fold deliberate, ceremonial, representing something: the first for life, the second for eternal life, the third for honor and remembrance. I count them automatically, a habit from years of attending military funerals. When the triangle is complete, Captain Price performs a facing movement and approaches me with the flag. His heels click together sharply. On behalf of the President of the United States Air Force, and a grateful nation, please accept this flag as a symbol of our appreciation for your loved one's service. I take the flag, hold it against my chest for a moment, feeling the weight of it, the starched fabric, the meaning behind this ceremony. Then I turn to my father. She was your wife, I say quietly. You should have this. I place the flag in his hands. They're shaking. Behind me someone whispers, "Did he say General?" Another voice, louder, "Brigadier General Marriott. She's the deputy commander at Peterson Space Force Base." A third voice, male, older. I served with her in Afghanistan. She ran air operations for the entire theater. My father looks down at the flag in his hands, then up at me. His mouth opens, but no sound comes out. Her name was Evelyn, I say, still quiet, still calm. And she was worth 1,000 speeches about duty. She taught me that real strength doesn't need an audience. That honor isn't about the uniform you wear, it's about how you treat people when no one's keeping score. She taught me that some people mistake cruelty for discipline and call it leadership. She was wrong about one thing, though. She thought you might change. I step back. Captain Price directs the honor guard to present arms. Somewhere outside, a bugler begins playing taps. The notes drift through the chapel windows, clear and lonely and final. My father remains seated, staring at the flag. I stand at attention through the entire ceremony. When the last note fades, the chaplain offers a closing prayer. People bow their heads. I keep mine up, watching the flag draped over my mother's casket, thinking about the letters she wrote, the phone calls she made, the quiet support she offered when my father's voice was loudest. The ceremony ends. People rise, gathering their belongings, moving toward the exit in the shuffling, awkward way people do at funerals. Several approach me. A lieutenant colonel I mentored at Air Command and Staff College, now running a wing at Joint Base Charleston. A rear admiral from Naval Station Norfolk who served on a joint task force I commanded, who tells me my mother would be proud. A master sergeant from my father's old unit who pulls me aside and says, "He never told us. Any of us. Just said you were drifting around, not doing much." I know, I say. That was his choice. For what it's worth, Evelyn told me once. About a year ago. Showed me a photo of you pinning on your star. She carried it in her wallet. My throat tightens. She never told me she had that photo. She had a lot of photos. Kept them private. Said she didn't need to share them with people who wouldn't appreciate them. The master sergeant shakes my hand, the grip firm and respectful, the handshake of one service member to another. "I'm sorry for your loss, ma'am. She was good people." The best, I say. People continue filtering out. My aunt appears at my elbow, her eyes red. "You're coming to the house, aren't you? For the reception." "I don't think that's a good idea." "Jesse," he made his position clear, Aunt Marie. "I'm not interested in spending the afternoon watching him try to save face. He's your father. He's a veteran I'm choosing to honor from a distance. There's a difference." I kiss her cheek and move toward the exit. Outside, Captain Price is directing the honor guard to load the flag-folded casket into the hearse. I approach him, and he comes to attention. "At ease, Captain. Thank you for your service today." "Of course, ma'am. I'm sorry for the circumstances. You served with me at Bagram, right? Task Force Guardian." "Yes, ma'am. Best 8 months of my career. You taught me more about leadership in that deployment than I learned in 4 years at West Point. You would have learned it eventually. You had good instincts." "Permission to speak freely, ma'am?" "Granted." He glances back toward the chapel, where my father is visible through the window, still sitting in the front row, still holding the flag. "I had no idea that was your father." "The things he said are his to own," I finish. "I stopped trying to manage his opinions about me a long time ago." "Does he know what you do? What you've done?" "He knows I'm in the Air Force." The details never interested him. Captain Price shakes his head. "Ma'am, you coordinated air support for the largest joint operation in the Afghan theater. You restructured our intelligence-sharing protocols. You personally approved the strike that took out a high-value target who'd killed 17 Americans. You saved lives. A lot of lives. I did my job. Same as you. Same as everyone who wears the uniform. With respect, ma'am, not everyone does their job at your level. I appreciate the loyalty, but I'm tired. Tired of this conversation, tired of this day, tired of standing in a funeral home parking lot defending my career to someone who already respects it. Captain, when you make general, you'll understand that rank is just a structure. It's not who you are. It's what you're authorized to do. My father doesn't understand that distinction, and I've accepted that he never will." "Yes, ma'am." I head to my rental car. My phone buzzes again. "Sarah, how'd it go?" "Me, about as expected. Heading back to Colorado tomorrow." "Sarah, want company tonight?" "I can fly out." "Me, no. But thank you." "Sarah, call if you change your mind." I mean it. I sit in the car for a long moment before starting the engine. Through the funeral home window, I can see my father finally standing, moving toward the exit with the flag clutched against his chest. People are gathering around him, offering condolences, probably asking questions he doesn't want to answer. I drive away before he reaches the parking lot. The hotel room in Northern Virginia feels temporary in the way all hotel rooms do, generic art on the walls, climate control that never quite gets comfortable, the faint smell of industrial detergent on the bedding. I've stayed in worse places. Tents in Afghanistan where the temperature swung 40 degrees between day and night. Temporary quarters on bases where the plumbing worked intermittently. A hostel in Germany where I slept with my boots on because I didn't trust the locks. This room has functioning Wi-Fi and a coffee maker. It's luxury by deployment standards. I should eat something. Haven't had food since breakfast, and that was a granola bar at 0600 hours before I drove to the funeral home. But the idea of sitting in a restaurant, making small talk with a server, pretending to have an appetite feels impossible. I order room service instead. Soup and bread. Safe choices. Food that won't make me sick if grief decides to manifest physically. While I wait for the delivery, I check my work email. Force of habit. There are 63 unread messages from the past 6 hours. Most can wait. A few require responses, approval for a training exercise, questions about a budget allocation, a scheduling conflict for a joint operations meeting. I draft replies, keeping them brief and professional. Work is easy. Work has clear objectives and measurable outcomes. Work doesn't ask me how I feel. My phone rings. Unknown number with a Virginia area code. I consider letting it go to voicemail, but answer anyway. Marriott. Jesse? It's Marie. Please don't hang up. I close my laptop. I'm listening. Your father wants to talk to you. Then he can call me himself. He doesn't have your number. You changed it 2 years ago. I changed it because he was calling at odd hours, usually drunk, always critical. Calling to tell me I needed to send more money, visit more often, care more about the family I'd abandoned. Calling to remind me that I was a disappointment, a failure, a daughter who'd chosen a career over her duty to her parents. I changed it for a reason, Aunt Marie. I know you did. But Jesse, sweetheart, he's in bad shape. He's been sitting in Evelyn's chair since we got back from the reception. Won't eat. Won't talk. Just sitting there holding that flag. That's grief. It's normal. It's more than grief. He's scared. Scared of what? Of what you said. Of what people are saying. Half the reception was veterans asking him why he never mentioned his daughter was a general. The other half was people who heard what he said at the funeral and wanted nothing to do with him. I should feel satisfaction at this. Justice, maybe. Vindication after years of being dismissed, diminished, erased from his narrative. Instead, I just feel tired. What do you want me to do, Aunt Marie? Come to the house. Talk to him. You don't have to forgive him. Just talk. He spent my entire life telling me I wasn't good enough. Today he told 300 people I was his greatest mistake. Why would I subject myself to more of that? Because despite everything, he's still your father. And because your mother would want you to try. That's the leverage that works. Not obligation, not guilt, but the memory of my mother's voice telling me that compassion doesn't mean accepting abuse, but it does mean recognizing pain in others. I'll come by tomorrow morning. Before I fly out. 30 minutes, that's all I'm offering. Thank you, sweetheart. That's all I'm asking. She hangs up. I sit on the edge of the hotel bed, staring at my phone. There's a text from Commander Luis Ortega, a Navy 05 I work with on joint operations planning. He somehow heard about the funeral, probably through the network of military personnel who seem to know everything about everyone. Heard today was rough. You good? Me, define good. Luis, fair point. You need anything? Me, 30-year-old Scotch and a time machine. Luis, fresh out of both. But I've got bourbon and an ear if you want to talk. Me, rain check. Thanks though. Luis, standing by. Room service arrives. I eat the soup mechanically, tasting nothing, chewing the bread because it's something to do with my hands. Afterward, I pull out my laptop again and do what I've been avoiding all day. I open the folder labeled Mom. It's full of scanned documents. Letters she wrote me during my first deployment, back when email was unreliable and mail call was the highlight of the week. Photos she sent over the years, her garden, her volunteer work at the VA hospital, pictures of the house in different seasons. A video she recorded 2 years ago when she got a smartphone and was figuring out how to use it. In the video, she's sitting in her kitchen, the afternoon light coming through the window behind her, making her white hair look almost golden. She's smiling, a little embarrassed, talking directly to the camera. Jessie, honey, I don't know if I'm doing this right. Marie showed me how to record this, but I think I'm holding the phone wrong. Can you see me? She adjusts the angle. There. Okay. I just wanted to tell you something. Your father and I were going through old photos last night, and I found the one from your commissioning ceremony. You looked so proud in that uniform. So sure of yourself. And I realized I never told you properly how proud I am of you. Not just for the uniform, but for who you became despite everything. She pauses, looking off camera for a moment. Your father has his own struggles. I won't make excuses for him, but I want you to understand that his hardness comes from his own fears. He saw himself in you, the stubbornness, the drive, the refusal to quit, and it terrified him because he never had the courage to push beyond what was expected. You did. You took all that fire and turned it into something meaningful. Her eyes get a little wet. I'm rambling. What I want to say is that you don't owe him forgiveness. You don't owe him anything. But I hope someday you find peace with it all, whatever that looks like for you. Because carrying anger is like carrying a rucksack full of rocks. Eventually, it just weighs you down. She smiles again. I love you, sweetheart. I'm proud of you. And I'll always be proud of you, no matter what path you choose. The video ends. I watch it 3 more times, then close the laptop and sit in the dark hotel room, trying to remember the last time I told her I loved her. The last real conversation we had was 2 weeks before she died. She called me on a Tuesday evening, catching me between meetings. I was distracted, checking email while we talked, half listening to her tell me about a new medication her doctor prescribed. Jessie, are you happy? She asked suddenly. I'm fulfilled, I said, still looking at my screen. That's not what I asked. Mom, I'm in the middle of something. Can I call you back? Of course, honey. Talk soon. I didn't call back. Got pulled into a crisis with a training accident, then a classified briefing, then a week of operational planning that bled into 14-hour days. I meant to call. Kept meaning to call. Added it to my mental to-do list every morning and never got around to it. Now I'll never get around to it. I lie down on the hotel bed, still dressed, staring at the ceiling. Outside, traffic hums on the highway. Somewhere in this city, my father is sitting in his house, holding a flag, realizing that the daughter he dismissed is someone he never actually knew. Tomorrow I'll go see him. Not because I forgive him. Not because I think one conversation will fix 27 years of damage. But because my mother asked me to be better than my anger, and the least I can do is try. I arrive at my father's house at 0800 hours, early enough that the neighborhood is quiet, late enough that showing up won't feel like an ambush. The yellow ribbon is still tied around the oak tree, faded to the color of old newspaper. The flagpole in the front yard stands empty. My father never flies the flag anymore, says it's disrespectful to leave it up in bad weather, though I think he just got tired of the daily ritual of raising and lowering it. I sit in my rental car for 5 minutes, gathering resolve. Through the living room window, I can see movement. My Aunt Marie, probably, making coffee and trying to manage whatever emotional state my father is in. I check my phone one last time. A message from Sarah Vance. Safe travels back. We'll handle everything here until you're ready. Another from Captain Price. Ma'am, if you need anything while you're still in Virginia, I'm stationed at Quantico. 20 minutes away. I appreciate the offers, but this is something I have to do alone. I walk to the front door and knock. My aunt answers immediately, like she's been waiting right there. Thank you for coming, she says quietly. He's in the living room. The house smells the same as it always has: coffee, old wood, the faint scent of the lemon polish my mother used on the furniture every Saturday. It's disorienting, walking into a space where she lived for 40 years and knowing she'll never be here again. My father is sitting in the recliner, same spot he was in when I arrived 3 days ago. The flag from my mother's funeral is folded on the coffee table in front of him. He's wearing civilian clothes now, khaki pants, a flannel shirt, reading glasses hanging from a chain around his neck. He looks older than he did yesterday. Smaller, somehow. Jessie, he says. Doesn't stand up. I remain standing near the doorway. Aunt Marie said you wanted to talk. Yes. I did. I do. He gestures to the couch. Will you sit? I sit on the edge of the cushion, back straight, hands folded. Professional posture, even in civilian clothes. Old habits. He's staring at the flag. I didn't know, he says finally. Didn't know what? About your rank. About what you do. About any of it. You never asked. I thought, he stops. Starts again. I thought I knew. You told me you were in the Air Force, working on satellites or computers or something. You never said I was serving. You decided that meant I wasn't doing anything important. He flinches. That's not fair. Fair. The word comes out sharper than I intend. You stood in front of everyone we know and called me your greatest mistake. You told them I never amounted to anything. And now you want to talk about fair. I was grieving. I wasn't thinking, you were thinking exactly what you always think. That I'm not good enough. That I never was. That's not true. I lean forward. Dad, I made first lieutenant at 25. Captain at 28. I deployed to Iraq during the surge and ran air support coordination for an entire sector. I made major at 32 and lieutenant colonel at 37. I've served in 8 countries. I've commanded hundreds of personnel. I've briefed senators and 4-star generals. I've made decisions that saved lives and ended threats. And, through all of it, you told people I was drifting, that I wasn't serious, that I was your disappointment. He's pale now, gripping the arms of the recliner. Why didn't you tell me? I did tell you. Every time I called, every time I visited. But you weren't listening. You were too busy rewriting the story to make yourself the hero and me the failure. I never meant, yes, you did. You meant every word. And the only reason you're upset now is because other people know the truth. You're not sorry you hurt me. You're sorry you embarrassed yourself. The silence stretches between us. Aunt Marie has retreated to the kitchen, giving us space, though I can hear her moving around, trying to be busy and invisible at the same time. My father looks at the flag again. When he speaks, his voice is quieter. Your mother knew. Of course she knew. She kept every letter I sent, every newspaper clipping about promotions. She had photos of my change of command ceremonies. She knew exactly what I was doing. She never told me. Never corrected me when he trails off. When you lied to your friends. When you diminished my service. She didn't correct you because you wouldn't have listened. You never listened to her either. That's not true. I loved your mother. Love isn't the same as respect. You loved her, but you didn't respect her opinion when it contradicted yours. Same way you loved me but couldn't respect anything I achieved. He closes his eyes. I don't know how to fix this. You can't fix it. You can only decide what happens next. What do you want me to do? I stand up. I want you to stop rewriting history. Stop telling people you got me into the Air Force, or that I'm barely keeping up, or that I never amounted to anything. If someone asks about me, tell them the truth, that you have a daughter who serves, and leave it at that. If you can't say anything accurate, don't say anything at all. And if I do that? If I stop? Then maybe in a few years, we can have coffee like civilized adults who happen to be related. But I'm not interested in pretending we have a relationship we never actually had. Jesse, my name is Brigadier General Marriott when we're in public. When we're alone, it's Jesse. But either way, I'm not your disappointment. I never was. I was just a daughter who needed a father, and you were too proud to see it. I walk toward the door. My aunt emerges from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. You're leaving. I have a flight at 1300 hours. Need to return the rental car and get through security. She hugs me, hard and long. Whispers in my ear, your mother would be proud of how you handled this. I'm not sure I handled it well. I'm just tired of handling it at all. That's wisdom, honey. Not weakness. I pull away and look back at my father one more time. He's still sitting in the recliner, looking at the flag, looking older and smaller than I've ever seen him. For a moment, just a moment, I feel something like pity. But pity isn't the same as obligation, and I've spent enough years trying to earn something from him that he's fundamentally incapable of giving. The flight back to Colorado is uneventful. Middle seat in economy, wedged between a businessman typing furiously on a laptop and a college student listening to music so loud I can hear the bass through her headphones. I close my eyes and try to sleep, but my mind won't settle. Keep replaying the conversation with my father, analyzing it like a military debrief. Did I accomplish the objective? Establish clear boundaries. Communicate expectations. Disengage from a situation that couldn't be won. By those metrics, yes. Mission accomplished. So why does it feel incomplete? I land at Colorado Springs at 1600 hours local time. Sarah Vance is waiting at baggage claim, leaning against a pillar, arms crossed, wearing civilian clothes and a knowing expression. You didn't have to pick me up, I say. I know. But I wanted to see your face, make sure you're actually okay, and not just saying you're okay. I'm okay. Liar. She grabs my bag before I can reach for it. Come on. I'm driving you home, and we're stopping for food on the way because I know you haven't eaten anything resembling a real meal in 3 days. How do you know that? Because I know you. When things get complicated, you forget about basic human needs like food and sleep. It's a terrible habit for a general officer. We walk to her car, a sensible Subaru covered in a thin layer of dust from Colorado's perpetual dryness. She throws my bag in the back and starts driving, not toward my house, but toward a diner on the north side of town. I'm not hungry, I say. Don't care. You're eating anyway. Consider it an order from your deputy commander. That's not how chain of command works. Today it is. The diner is one of those places that's been around for 40 years, unchanged except for the prices. Red vinyl booths, laminate tables, a menu featuring breakfast served all day. We slide into a corner booth, and Sarah orders coffee for both of us without asking. Talk, she says. About what? About whatever you need to talk about. Or don't talk. Just sit here and eat pancakes. Your choice. The waitress brings coffee. I wrap my hands around the mug, letting the heat seep into my palms. He didn't know, I say finally. Your father. About my rank. My position. Any of it. He genuinely thought I was just some mid-level officer floating around, not doing anything important. Sarah's quiet for a moment. How's that possible? You've been promoted how many times? 6 times since I made captain. He never asked for details. I stopped offering them. She pauses, choosing words carefully. That's his loss. You know that, right? Intellectually, yes. Emotionally, it's more complicated. What did you say to him? At the house this morning, I tell her about the conversation. The boundaries I set, the expectations I laid out, the way I walked away from any possibility of the reconciliation everyone expects in stories like this. Sarah listens without interrupting, the way good officers do when someone needs to process information out loud. When I finish, she nods slowly. You did the right thing. Did I? Or did I just give up? There's a difference between giving up and recognizing a situation that can't be fixed. You spent 27 years trying to earn approval from someone who is never going to give it. That's not your failure. That's his. My mother would say I should try harder. Be more patient. Your mother is gone. And with all respect to her memory, you don't owe your father patience he never extended to you. The pancakes arrive. I eat mechanically, not tasting much, but Sarah's right, I needed food. My blood sugar was probably in the basement. We sit in comfortable silence for a while. Then Sarah says, what happens now? Now I go back to work. Focus on the things I can control. Run my command. Mentor officers who actually want to learn. Live my life. And your father? He can live his life too. Separately from mine. You're sure about that? I set down my fork. Sarah, I coordinated air operations for the largest joint task force in the Afghan theater. I restructured intelligence sharing protocols across 4 agencies. I've briefed the Secretary of Defense. I've made decisions under pressure that most people can't imagine. But I can't make my father see me as anything other than a disappointment, and I'm done trying. Okay, she says simply. Just wanted to make sure you'd thought it through. I've thought about nothing else for the past 72 hours. Then I'm satisfied. Finish your pancakes. We need to talk about the training exercise next month. We shift into work mode, discussing schedules and logistics and personnel decisions. It's a relief, honestly, to focus on problems that have solutions, objectives that can be met, metrics that can be measured. By the time Sarah drops me off at my house, a small ranch I bought 5 years ago, close to base, decorated minimally because I'm never there long enough to accumulate much, it's dark. I stand in my driveway for a moment, looking up at the stars. Clear night, no moon, the kind of sky that makes you understand why humans built telescopes and rockets and dreamed of flying. Inside, I unpack methodically. Dirty clothes in the hamper. Toiletries back in the bathroom. The funeral program goes in a drawer with other documents I don't want to look at but can't bring myself to throw away. My phone buzzes. Text from Commander Luis Ortega. You survive. Me, barely. But yes. Luis, good. Need you functional. Got questions about the Joint Ops Plan. Me, send them over. I'll review tonight. Luis, tonight? You just flew back from a funeral. Me, work helps. Luis, fair. Sending now. I open my laptop and spend the next 3 hours reviewing operational plans for an upcoming exercise. It's complex, detailed work that requires focus and precision. It's also exactly what I need, a problem I know how to solve, a mission with clear parameters, a world where competence matters and legacy doesn't. Around 2300 hours, I finally close the laptop and get ready for bed. But sleep doesn't come easily. I lie in the dark, thinking about my mother's video, her voice telling me that carrying anger is like carrying rocks. Thinking about my father sitting in his recliner, holding a flag from a funeral where he humiliated himself. Thinking about the years I spent trying to bridge a gap that was never going to close. Somewhere around 0200 hours, I get up and write a letter. Not to my father, I've said everything I need to say to him. To my mother. Dear Mom, I know you're gone. I know you'll never read this. But I need to say some things anyway. I'm sorry I didn't call you back that last time. I'm sorry I let work take priority over telling you I loved you. I'm sorry for all the times I cut conversations short because I was busy or tired or convinced there would always be more time. You were right about Dad. He is scared. Scared of a world where women can be generals, where daughters can surpass their fathers, where the rules he lived by don't apply anymore. But you were also right that I don't owe him forgiveness. I owe him truth. I gave him that. Whether he accepts it or not is his choice. I want you to know that I'm okay. I'm more than okay. I built a career that matters. I lead people who respect me. I make decisions that save lives. I became the kind of officer who treats subordinates with dignity, who listens before speaking, who admits mistakes and learns from them. I became everything Dad couldn't see and everything you knew I would be. I'm not carrying the rocks anymore. I set them down. I miss you. I wish you were here to tell me I did the right thing. But I think you'd be proud anyway. Love, Jesse. I fold the letter, put it in an envelope, and tuck it into the drawer with the funeral program. Then I finally sleep. 6 months pass. I don't hear from my father. Don't expect to. Life continues in the steady rhythm of military service, command briefings, training exercises, personnel evaluations, operational planning. I mentor a young captain who reminds me of myself at that age, ambitious and uncertain, trying to figure out how to lead without losing herself. I attend a change of command ceremony for a colonel I served with in Afghanistan, watch her pass the guidon to her successor with the same mixture of pride and exhaustion I remember from my own changes of command. Work expands to fill the available space. It always does. In July, I get a call from Aunt Marie. I almost don't answer, but something makes me pick up. Jesse? It's Marie. I'm sorry to bother you. You're not bothering me. What's wrong? It's your father. He's in the hospital. Heart attack. They think he'll be okay, but it was serious enough that she pauses. I thought you should know. I'm sitting at my desk on base, surrounded by classified documents and operational plans. Outside my window, I can see airmen running PT, the morning sun glinting off the mountains. How serious? Serious enough that they're keeping him for observation. Serious enough that he asked me to call you. He asked you to call me? He did. Said he wanted to see you if you had time. I look at my calendar. Wall-to-wall meetings for the next 2 weeks, a congressional visit, a joint training exercise that's been planned for months. I could delegate some of it. Sarah's perfectly capable of handling most of my daily responsibilities. But the question isn't whether I can go. It's whether I want to. I'll try to get out there next week, I hear myself say. Thank you, sweetheart. I know it's a lot to ask. It's fine. Send me the hospital information. She does. I hang up and stare at the phone for a long moment, then call Sarah. I need to take a few days next week. Personal matter. Your father. How did you, because you sound exactly like you did the last time something involved your father. Want company? No. But thank you. Offer stands. And Jesse? Whatever you decide to do when you get there, it's the right choice. Trust yourself. I fly commercial again, arrive in Northern Virginia on a Tuesday evening. Rent a car, drive to a hotel, spend a restless night trying to convince myself this isn't a mistake. Wednesday morning at 0900 hours, I walk into the cardiology wing of Fairfax Hospital. My father is in room 412, and when I knock, Aunt Marie opens the door. He's awake, she whispers. Tired, but awake. She slips out, leaving me alone with him. He looks diminished in the hospital bed. The four-line, the heart monitor, the thin gown, all of it strips away the military bearing he wore like armor. His hair is thinner than I remember, more gray than brown now. His hands, folded on top of the blanket, have age spots I'd never noticed. Jesse, he says. His voice is rough. You came. Aunt Marie said you asked for me. I did. Wasn't sure you would. I sit in the chair beside the bed. I wasn't sure either. He nods slowly, like this is exactly what he expected. They tell me I need to change things. Diet, exercise, stress. Said this was a warning shot. They're usually right about that. Yeah. He's quiet for a moment, looking at the ceiling tiles. I've been thinking a lot. About what you said. About what I did. I wait. I was wrong, he says finally. At the funeral. Before that. All of it. I was wrong. Okay. That's all you're going to say? Okay. What do you want me to say, Dad? That it's fine? That we can move past it? I can't give you absolution for 27 years in one hospital visit. I don't want absolution. I want you to understand why. Why doesn't change what happened? No. But maybe it explains it. He shifts in the bed, wincing. I wanted a son. I know that's not fair, I know it's not your fault, but that's the truth. I wanted a son I could teach, mold, turn into a soldier. When you were born, I tried to do that anyway. Tried to make you tough, make you strong. But you were always your mother's daughter, soft where I wanted hard, emotional where I wanted disciplined. I am disciplined. I just learned a different kind of discipline than you taught. I know that now. But back then, I saw you wanting to fly planes and thought it was a fantasy. I saw you joining ROTC and thought it was rebellion. I saw you getting promoted and thought it was luck or quotas or anything except what it actually was, skill and dedication and hard work. Why couldn't you see it? What about me made it so impossible to believe I was capable? He's quiet for so long I think he might not answer. Then, because if I admitted you were better than me, I'd have to admit I wasted my potential. I made Sergeant Major and stopped. Told myself that was enough, that I'd gone as far as an enlisted man could go. But I could have tried for a commission. Could have pushed harder, reached further. I didn't. And when you did, when you kept climbing past everything I'd ever achieved, it made me face the fact that I'd settled for comfortable instead of pursuing excellence. This is the most honest thing he's ever said to me. So you tore me down to avoid confronting your own choices. Yes. That's not an explanation that makes it better. I know. I stand up, move to the window. Below, the parking lot is filling with morning visitors. What do you want from me, Dad? Why did you ask me to come here? I want to know if there's any chance we can start over. Start over? We can't erase history. No. But maybe we can try something new. Maybe I can learn who you actually are instead of who I decided you should be. I turn to face him. That would require you to listen. Actually listen, not just wait for your turn to talk. It would require you to accept that my life, my choices, my career are valid even if they don't match your expectations. It would require you to stop rewriting history to make yourself the hero. I can do that. Can you? Because the first time something challenges your worldview, the first time I tell you something that doesn't fit your narrative, you'll go right back to dismissing me. That's your pattern. Then let me prove I can change. Why should I give you that chance? Because despite everything, I'm still your father. Because your mother would want you to. And because maybe you're curious whether an old man can actually learn new tricks. He almost smiles at that last part. Almost. I sit back down. If we do this, we do it on my terms. You don't get to question my choices. You don't get to offer unsolicited advice about my career. You don't get to tell people stories about me unless they're true and you verified them. And the first time you cross those boundaries, I walk away. Permanently. Deal. I mean it, Dad. One violation, and we're done. I understand. I agree. We sit in silence for a while. The heart monitor beeps steadily. Somewhere down the hall, a cart rattles past. Tell me about your job, he says finally. What do you actually do? You really want to know? I really do. So I tell him. Not everything, much of it is classified, but enough. I tell him about coordinating air operations, about the balance between mission objectives and personnel safety, about the complexity of joint operations where Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marines all have to work together. I tell him about the officers I mentor, the decisions I make, the weight of command. He listens. Actually listens, asking questions that suggest he's processing information instead of waiting to argue. When I finish, he's quiet for a long moment. Your mother knew, he says. She tried to tell me, but I wouldn't listen. She knew a lot of things you wouldn't listen to. Yeah, I'm figuring that out. A nurse comes in to check his vitals, giving us a natural break. When she leaves, my father says, "Will you come back? After today? Maybe. If you keep your word about boundaries." I will. Then maybe. It's not forgiveness. It's not reconciliation. It's just the smallest possible opening, a crack in a door that's been closed for decades. Whether it opens further depends entirely on whether he can follow through. I leave the hospital an hour later. Aunt Marie walks me to the elevator. "Thank you for coming," she says. "I didn't do it for him." "I know. But you did it. That's what matters." I drive back to Colorado the next day, back to work, back to the life I've built. And if part of me is still waiting for my father to prove me wrong about giving him another chance, well, hope is a risk I'm finally willing to take. 2 years pass. My father and I speak on the phone once a month, sometimes twice. The conversations are stilted at first, careful, like we're both navigating a minefield with a map neither of us fully trusts. He asks about my work. I give him the unclassified version. He tells me about his doctor appointments, his volunteer work at the VFW, the repairs he's making to the house. He doesn't offer advice I didn't ask for. Doesn't rewrite my stories. Doesn't diminish my accomplishments. It's not warmth, but it's respect. That's more than we've ever had. I stand in my quarters at the Pentagon, holding a box of letters my mother saved for 30 years. Outside, the sun is setting over Arlington, casting long shadows across the parade ground where tomorrow morning, junior officers will run PT and pretend they're not exhausted. I've been a 2-star Major General for 5 years now. My father calls every Sunday. That sentence would have seemed impossible a decade ago. After my mother's funeral, after my father stood at a podium and called me his greatest mistake, after an Army captain addressed me as General, ma'am, in front of 300 witnesses, after I walked away from the man who spent my entire life dismissing everything I achieved, I didn't expect reconciliation. Expected silence. Expected the same pattern we'd maintained for years. Me sending money, him sending criticism, both of us pretending we had a relationship. But 6 months after the funeral, he had a heart attack. Aunt Marie called, said he'd asked for me. I flew to Virginia, sat in a hospital room that smelled like disinfectant and fear, and listened to him say the words he'd never said before. I was wrong. Not, "I'm sorry you took it that way." Not, "I didn't mean it like that." Just, I was wrong. I told him I couldn't fix 27 years in a hospital visit. Told him if we tried again, it would be on my terms, no rewriting history, no unsolicited advice, no crossing boundaries. One violation and I'd walk away permanently. He agreed. I left uncertain whether an old soldier could actually change his programming. For 2 years, we spoke once a month. Careful conversations. Weather, work, surface-level updates. He sent emails, awkward forwards of Air Force articles with subject lines like, "Thought you'd find this interesting." I responded briefly. Sometimes sent articles back. It became a strange dialogue conducted through links and two-sentence replies, both of us learning a language we'd never spoken. Then he called on a Tuesday evening. Asked if I'd come to a Veterans Day ceremony where he was speaking. Said he wanted to tell the truth this time, about his daughter, and thought I should hear it. I almost said no. Almost told him I didn't need public validation from a man who'd privately destroyed me for decades. But something in his voice, not pleading, just honest, made me book a flight. The ceremony was at Arlington, small amphitheater, maybe 200 people. I wore my service dress uniform. Full ribbons, badges, the single star marking me as Brigadier General. Not hiding anymore. My father walked to the podium in his old sergeant major uniform and said, "I'm not here to talk about my service today. I'm here to talk about what I got wrong." He told them everything. How he dismissed my commissioning, minimized my deployments, convinced himself my promotions were inflated peacetime ranks. How he'd stood at his wife's funeral and called his daughter his greatest mistake. How an army captain had stopped the ceremony to address me as General, ma'am, and he'd realized that while he'd been busy dismissing me, I'd become someone who commanded air operations, briefed senators, saved lives, earned respect from every service member I worked with. "You are not my mistake," he said, looking directly at me. "You are my daughter. And I am proud of you." The amphitheater went silent. My aunt cried. Veterans nodded. My father had just done publicly what he'd never done privately, acknowledged the truth. Afterward, I asked him why then. "Because private apologies are easy to take back," he said. "Public ones require you to live up to them." It wasn't absolution. Wasn't a Disney ending. But it was real. We had lunch at a diner, conversation stilted and awkward. At his house, he showed me a box my mother had kept under her bed, every letter I'd sent her, every promotion announcement, every newspaper clipping documenting a career he'd refused to see. He gave me the box. Said she'd want me to have it. I drove away watching him in the rearview mirror, thinking about how people can grow even late, even after decades of getting it wrong. 5 years passed. We found a rhythm. Sunday calls, 20 to 30 minutes. He told me about mentoring young veterans at the VFW, about planting roses in my mother's memory. She always wanted them. I told her they were too much work. Turns out I had the time, just not the willingness. When I was selected for my 3rd star, Lieutenant General, I called him before the public announcement. Asked if he'd come to the ceremony. "You want me there?" he asked, like he couldn't quite believe it. "I do. And I think Mom would want you there too." He came. Wore his dress uniform, moved slower than I remembered, but his bearing was still military straight. Sarah Vance and Luis Ortega were there. Major Price, promoted from captain. Aunt Marie. Colleagues from 3 decades of service. During my remarks, I talked about expectations and how dangerous they are when rigid. About chasing approval from someone who couldn't give it because I didn't match his vision. About learning that people can change, that admitting you were wrong takes more courage than never being wrong at all. My mother taught me that real strength includes compassion, I said, looking at my father in the 3rd row. My father is teaching me that real courage includes humility. Both lessons matter. Both have made me a better officer and a better person. After the ceremony, he saluted me. I returned it, sharp and correct. "Congratulations, Lieutenant General Marriott." "Thank you, Sergeant Major Marriott." At the reception that night, before he left, he found me at the edge of the crowd. "I'm proud of you, Jesse. I should have said it 30 years ago, but I'm saying it now. I'm proud of you." First time he'd said those exact words. "I know," I said. "And it matters." "Good. Because I plan to keep saying it until you believe me." "You might be saying it for a while then." "I've got time." Later, in my quarters, I pulled out my mother's box of letters. At the bottom was one she'd written to me 3 months before she died, addressed but never mailed. She wrote that I didn't owe my father forgiveness, didn't owe him anything except truth. But if someday he found courage to change, she hoped I'd have grace to notice. Not for his sake, for mine. because carrying anger is exhausting and I deserved rest. She wrote that I'd become an extraordinary officer and woman without his support, which made it more remarkable. But I'd done it with her love, and she hoped that counted for something. She wrote that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let someone prove they've changed. I folded the letter carefully, sat in the quiet thinking about courage and change and the long road from disappointment to pride. Outside, taps played across the base. I stood at attention in my living room, habit, respect, ritual, until the last note faded. Then I wrote my father an email. Thank you for coming today. It meant more than I said. Let's have dinner next month when I'm back in Virginia. My treat. He responded within 10 minutes. I'd like that. Proud of you, kiddo. It's not perfect. Not the relationship we should have had from the beginning. But it's real, it's growing, and it's ours. We'll never get back the years we lost. Can't rebuild what was never properly built in the first place. But we're building something new on the foundation of hard lessons and honest apologies. My father learned that real strength includes admitting when you're wrong. I learned that compassion doesn't mean accepting abuse, but it does mean recognizing when someone is genuinely trying to change. My mother was right. Carrying anger is like carrying rocks. Eventually, you just have to set them down. He wanted obedience. Mom wanted honor. I learned that one can exist without the other. And for now, that's everything. That's where I drew the line, and I haven't looked back. If this resonated, tap like, subscribe for more first-person boundary stories, and share this with someone who needs a steady voice today. Questions for you: when did you realize respect matters more than obedience? Have you ever been publicly undermined by family? How did you respond? What boundary changed everything for you, and did you keep it? If an apology finally came, did you accept it or move on? For those from military families, what does honor look like at home?